share a lot of commonalities, like in their teachings and stuff like that. And did you find that to be the case in the Shinto or
Shinto? Yeah, okay. I absolutely did. So you'd really do anything you could to get people to talk about the church with you or about Christ, right? Mm-hmm. And so one guy, he said, "Okay, well, I'll listen to you guys for an hour if you'll listen to me for an hour." Mm-hmm. So, all right, yeah, we'll make that trade for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? And so we taught him a lesson, and then he taught us a lesson based off of Shintoism. Mm-hmm. And some of the structure and different things that he was explaining was eerily similar to the LDS church. As far as like the spirits were similar to like an Adam and Eve type situation where they created, mankind. They created the earth or whatever. And then the structure of how those two spirits laid out their lives and had kids and different things, supposedly, right, was so similar to the LDS church on the structure of like the 12 apostles and
interesting
prophets and different things like that. That was crazy to kind of, as he was teaching us, how similar it actually was.
Yeah.
Now, Buddhism is different, right? But
that's based off the teachings of Buddha himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they believe in the connection to their ancestors.
Okay.
On a very spiritual level.
Yeah.
The practicing Buddhists, right?
So like
a lot of
reincarnation or what?
Sure.
Kind of reincarnation, but more so visitation, and then they're still out there somewhere. Okay. And so they would take, if somebody close to them died, they'd take their favorite food or they'd take their favorite different things, leave it at the altar for them to be able to partake of, to still have what they loved. And there's a certain time of the year called Oshogatsu, which is around the time of New Year's, which is where the ancestors kind of come back to the family.
Oh, that's kind of like the Day of the Dead or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's the Buddhist version of the Day of the Dead.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
In Japan, right? I don't know about Buddhists in different parts
of
the world, but at least in Japan during Oshogatsu, it's that's when all their family gets together. That's when they celebrate their ancestors. That's when they believe their ancestors come back and they check on them and share with experiences with them, different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique culture for a kid growing up in Utah to go and, learn the language. Talk to people like
what was that like, learning the language?
I still love the Japanese language.
Yeah.
Really difficult to learn.
We might have to get you to sign off with the Japanese.
Oh, man, it's been a while. I could say something. But it's... as with any language, when you're learning it, your ability to learn it just depends on how willing you are to be vulnerable.
Sure.
And it's not just with learning the language, right? That's pretty much with learning anything. Your willingness to put yourself out there and make mistakes determines a lot of your ability to learn that, to overcome those trials or different things like that, right?
That's the entrepreneur in him talking.
Yeah. So it was really easy to tell the missionaries that were better at Japanese. They were willing to make mistakes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's hard to be willing to do that. Completely understand that. It's difficult to put yourself out there speaking with, native people and thinking that they're going to judge how you're speaking and thinking
you feel like an idiot if you don't say it right. Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I said something and the person I was talking to, their face was just like immediately got confused.
Yeah.
Just like,
can you pick out like accents?
Not so much.
Okay.
I mean,
that'd probably take years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Years and years.
I mean, there's certain words that give away certain accents.
Yeah.
But as far as like picking up their tonalities, it's really difficult. Local Japanese people can do it for sure, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
But for being such a small country, the tonalities and dialects change drastically for being so small. It's crazy, actually. It's similar to, I would say, England, right? Where England's a really, and the UK is such a small country.
Yeah.
But the dialects and accents change so drastically.
You go 50 miles that way, and all of a sudden it sounds different. Yeah.
It's almost a completely different language.
And like in the United States, there's only a certain amount like of accents, like Southern and
if you go Southern, you go up into the north, the Northeast, up in there, you get some deeper accents.
Some deeper ones.
I heard there's about 70% of people in the United States that speak speak generally the same.
Yeah.
I would
Almost
agree
that
with
much.
that. Yeah, I would
and then that 30% is like isolated to a bunch of different
Yeah.
types of accents. And even in the same areas, there's still people that like, there's like what I call a small town talk.
Yeah.
Where no matter
And
where
Spanish
you are,
Fork used to have that.
yeah, you could go Spanish Fork, you go Santa Quinn and Utah,
Like
but then you could go to
batteries and
you could go to small town California and still hear the same
yeah.
accent. They're still saying fur instead of for. They're still
Mountain
saying
instead of mountain.
Yeah, yeah.
Creek
still-
instead of creek and
Yeah, and that's just.
you could.
I feel like that's just a small town thing wherever you're at. You
Right.
know what I mean? And then the South is like totally different.
Yeah.
and it's totally like
And
different
I'm
dialect.
and there's different dialects in even the South.
In the South,
like,
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, and South
but we're
is
pretty spread out. The United States is big,
Yeah.
huge.
so we're pretty spread out before things
Right.
change.
Yeah,
quite a bit,
absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, which is way different from, like I said, the UK and Japan and probably
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different other places in the world where, for being such a small place, I would say it comes from the history of the country, how long it's been around, right? I mean,
Sure.
the US is one of the newest countries in the world
Yeah,
compared to, Japan and the United Kingdom and some of these other places. And so the people that have grown up in those areas, hundreds, maybe thousands of years
Yeah,
of history there
for sure.
of speaking a specific way versus everybody in the United States. Let's just throw everybody in a
Yeah.
melting pot here.
and like
And everybody's going to end up speaking generally.
Yeah,
the most interesting like accent in America, I think, is like Creole, like in Louisiana,
Yeah.
and like you can't understand them.
so, some of it you can.
You can even
heavy.
understand them.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
But no, accents, yeah, I mean, just in Japan, it's very interesting language to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sentence structure is the opposite,
Mm.
where you're the nouns and verbs
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
That's
objectives.
that's
everything
got to
was
be the
totally
hardest
flipped around.
part to get used to.
It was tough to get used to, but I think the hardest part to get used to, I mean, that's one of them, but there's small conjugation Japanese that I mean, it's Spanish is similar in the sense where, the verb run, every way to say it has a different conjugation.
Yeah.
Whether it's past tense, future tense,
Right.
did,
Okay.
or it
Right.
was done to you, or you were
Okay.
thinking about doing it, or you tried to do it, or you wanted to see what it would look like. So there's different conjugations for every single way that you can do a verb
Oh wow.
So-
in Japanese. So that was really difficult to kind of learn.
Is
and
there
pick up.
more words in the Japanese language than English?
No, I would say there's a lot more words in English.
Okay.
The Japanese just have they just go directly to the point when they speak, but yet in a very, very roundabout way.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. But,
Yeah.
So they only have a few ways to say certain things, but in English, you'd think of like 10 different ways to say
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because there'd be
Yeah.
multiple types of emotions that
Mm-hmm.
change
Yeah.
what you're thinking or feeling.
Sure.
Whereas in Japanese, it's just one way to say it, and you just have to interpret based off of context what they actually mean. So because of that, they're direct, but then when they're actually speaking about what they're feeling or problems or different things like that, they're very indirect, right? They just push
Yeah.
as much
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So after Japan and back to basketball, what kind of made you decide to go into entrepreneurship? I mean, I know your mom is an entrepreneur because I worked for her
Yeah.
for quite a while at the Anytime Fitness. But kind of what led you down that direction?
I would say,
You kind of saw what your mom was doing, like she kind of had that.
well,
Or did you
it was
look
more
at what
so-
they were failing at and said, "Hey, I want to improve," or what?
Yeah.
well, so a lot of people when they go, a lot of families, they all have their own, I don't know, nuances, their own things that they talk about, their own like, common interests and different things. For my family, it's pretty much always about business or about real estate,
Yeah.
or about different things like that, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we'd go out to restaurants, from when I was the time as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whenever we'd go out to restaurants or whenever we'd go to Disneyland or whenever we'd do different things, we would all kind of see things that were happening in the businesses where we were at and then think about what we liked, what we didn't like, and just make
Yeah.
comments about them, right?
Yeah.
And my mom,
That's a awesome way to think about, like, especially if you're an entrepreneur.
right? No, absolutely. And it just kind of makes you aware and gives you a business savvy that I don't know where I would have got otherwise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, my mom, she's, you know this, John.
She's Swedish.
She is Swedish,
Yeah.
and she cares so much about the experience that you give the people at the business.
Yeah.
So whenever we're at a restaurant or whatever, we're at certain places where there's not good service, she takes it personal. And it's
okay.
not personal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're just like, sometimes they make it personal because she can kind of be mean sometimes when it comes down to that, right? But she just cares so much about making sure that people are experiencing and they're happy and they feel comfortable with where they're at.
Yeah.
And they're getting top-notch service. And so that was one of the things that all growing up we would comment on. Like, they should do this differently. This was awesome service, right? So
It kind of gets your brain moving as
does,
a kid,
yeah.
thinking like, okay, yeah, I could.
no, absolutely. And so that's
How can I better my business?
right. How can I better my business? What would I do differently? What are they doing really well? And just you get in the habit of whenever you walk into a space, you're always thinking that.
Yeah.
And it just becomes habit. So you start to recognize things, train your mind, your subconscious to start to think about things and what you do different.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's honestly a large part of where my entrepreneurship spirit came from, was my parents and just the conversations we had growing up. And then put on top of that, you know, I'm able to control my own destiny and
I love that.
And you're as successful as you make it.
Yeah.
You make yourself, right?
Right.
And I love that versus it's not just answering to somebody else that I don't love. It's not being able to, you know, pursue your dreams.
Sure. And make the decisions that you want.
Yeah.
You know.
And
Yeah.
being passionate about something vitally important with whatever we do, right? I have found that people seem to be a lot more passionate when they get to pick what they want to do.
Yeah. So what made you decide to buy the gym?
So to do the gym,
Yeah.
so kind of a funny story, honestly. So I was working at a tech company doing sales. I was kind of in between things. I was thinking I'd worked on a real estate software for.
Was that when I was
years.
training you again?
Yeah.
See how many times I've trained this dude?
I have been training a lot, and I need to go back to that. Actually.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's kind of a unique time. I was thinking, I was working at this tech company for a while, and the reason I was there was because I wanted to learn about startups. And this company was a great place to learn about that. I was able to network with a lot of amazing individuals. And that was my goal of being there, right? Was to learn, was to network, was to kind of gather in how these tech companies, startups
Maybe
work.
get some connections for starting your own business.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Networking is
networking.
is vital, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly probably more valuable than almost anything else that is, you know, some genius engineer or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's
And
not me. And
you
I'm
can't
more of a
learn
people
everything out of a
person.
book
Right. Yeah.
either.
No,
like
no.
you need to network with the right people.
Right. No, absolutely. And so went to work for this tech company, learned a ton. I was there for almost a year. And this was about a year ago. This was right when COVID came around.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about what my next step was going to be, right? So I was like, well, I know I want it to be a business. I'm tired of not doing what I wanted to do, of not starting my own business, of not doing these things. I was tired of making excuses. I was tired of finding temporary solutions to what I wanted to. I was tired of doing that, right? So kind of took a step back and looked at where I was at and thought, well, I know business is where I want to be for forever, and this is such a perfect opportunity to step into something. And so I was just thinking about different opportunities, and the gym was not even one that was on my radar.
Yeah.
I was not even thinking about it, right? My mom's contract with Anytime Fitness was coming up.
Yeah, and that was a kind of a shitty contract.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Anytime's kind of a rough franchise to be a part of.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
she's told me before, like, she was gonna buy the one in Payson, but they made it so hard for her to do that because they cater to first-time business owners.
Oh.
Yeah, so Payson was a really interesting situation, right? So for a lot of years, they were trying to open one in Payson. And because they saw the growth happening in Santaquin.
Yeah.
Well, Santaquin's not quite ready, but let's do one in Payson because then we'll capture what's south of Payson.
And it's-
right?
But it's like barely within the limit.
It's in great location.
But like the Payson gym to the Anytime Fitness that was in Salem,